All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the lesson. Today we're going to be talking about support, resistance, and we'll even go over some, formations that maybe form off of those couple things. This is going to be recorded as always. I can't share my screen, but I did share those graphics with you, so you can follow along as we talk through those. And then, so again, will be recorded. We'll put it on YouTube, so you guys can go back and watch it or screenshot or take notes or anything. So we'll go over this. Feel free to raise your hands or type in the premium chat. You can even DM me if you don't want to publicly ask your question, but ask any questions. We'll kind of cover this, and then we'll go over that, and then I'll open it up to questions about just anything in general. So that first picture, it's the graph, has the red line on the top, the green line on the bottom. So what is support and resistance? As we look at charts, we went over candlesticks, we went over what they are, how they form, things like that. And as we look at our charts, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at candlesticks. So as these candlesticks form and, the day goes about, as we look at the different time frames, we can start to see support and resistance lines form. And you can see these on every level, literally. You can see it all the way from the 1 minute all the way up to, the yearly. And support and resistance lines are going to be different based off your time frames, because obviously things move differently in a 1 minute chart than they would in a hour chart or a yearly if you're looking that far out. We use 6 months a lot. We can see support and resistance on those. So in this particular graphic, we can see it's the British pound compared to the US dollar, but fill in the blank with any stock you want. It's going to be the same thing. So as we can see, if we look from left to right, we can see this stock kind of come into the screen and it's doing its thing. So we go through, you see a big drop down into that red area, and then you see a pretty big bounce. That's the very first, drop down into that. At this time is actually support. On this picture, it's resistance. We'll continue to talk about that. So the big drop, this area is actually support on it right now. So you can see it then has a pretty decent bounce. It even bounces to the upside, comes back in, tests this area, and then again continues higher. So if you look at the peak, if you look at the wicks, basically a double top. You can see it come down, about half of that last move, and then pretty high move there, comes back up, and then you can see a huge drop. Well, now that drops into, again, that same, at this point, support, because it's now tested that several times, and that to this point has acted as an area of support. So you can see it kind of trades in that range a little bit, and then it breaks down through that red line. So now, not 100%, but you can say, okay, this support has now flipped to resistance. You can do that, but we like to see a little more confirmation a lot of times. So you can see it dipped down below that, and then it immediately shot back up. It shot all the way into it and through it. It went back up. So now you're saying, maybe, we didn't flip this support as resistance yet. So, we'll give it a little more time. You see it comes back down. It's kind of trading in that range. And then a huge drop down back through that. So that a lot of times is going to be your confirmation that, okay, this support is now flipped to resistance. You can see this does have a third retest. Bounces pretty heavily. Bounces into that, what we would now call resistance, and all the way through it. But that's a false breakout, because as you can see, after it does that, it immediately dumps all the way back through it, trades in that range a little bit, and then, dumps heavily. So that top line, that red line where the arrows are pointing at, let's say resistance, as we just spoke about in the beginning of this chart from left to right, that's the support. Well, now we've flipped that into resistance. So what is the difference? If you're looking at a chart and a chart's trading through whatever time frame, and it keeps bouncing off this certain level, that is a support. So this level or this price is support for the stock. We'll take a look at some real time examples here in a little bit, but as you can see, it kind of bounced, went back up, bounced, went back up, kind of bounced, broke down through, went back up, broke down through. That's kind of your confirmation. Had another false breakout, call it a short squeeze, what have you, and then it just breaks down all the way through it. And now it's trading under that what used to be support and is now resistance. So if you look at the far left, if you're looking at your screen, arrow that's pointing to those candlesticks, we can call this resistance. So now this stock is trading in this range all the way down, and because we broke this support and flipped this support now to resistance, we have to find a new support. So as you can see, it breaks all the way down, comes all the way down to this green level, which is now we're going to call support. So why do we call that support? So from the breakdown of the previous support, now flipped resistance, this is basically the first, big area of relief or support. So we can see, it hits this level, it briefly consolidates and then shoots to the roof. I mean, that's a big upside there. So we can initially say, is this a support or not? It broke way up there. It came back down. It didn't even retest that, and it just continues. Obviously it's pretty choppy, but it goes higher and higher and higher and higher until it hits that now again resistance. And we found this resistance because back in the chart, starting from left to right, we flipped that support to resistance. And we came up here and retested this, and we know this is a resistance. So we can say, okay, this stock is probably going to hit this level and come back down, which you can see it perfectly did. Came about halfway down through the range, comes back up, touches that area again. And you're just, again, okay, well, this is resistance until it's not. So resistance again, you can probably say this is probably going to go back down. If you're looking at a stock and you're a short bias trader, this resistance is where you want to start your shorts. Halfway down, maybe take profit, and then if it goes all the way back down to support, cool. And then the support, as you can see, it taps that resistance, comes all the way back down, perfectly touches that support. So now maybe you can be a long bias trader. You can say, okay, we've touched this level multiple times. I know that this is now support for this stock. Let me go ahead and long it. And as you can see, that would have been a great decision. Huge upside there. Came back down, touches this support again. A total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 times. And so it's just more and more confirmation that is, now support. So support and resistance are basically levels or prices that buyers and sellers have basically deemed this is where we're going to, sell it. This is where we're going to buy it. So support and resistance are basically created at levels where buyers and or sellers, whether it's support or resistance, are saying, okay, now we're in control. And a resistance is a resistance until it flips to support. And then same thing for support. Support is just that, it's support until it flips to resistance. So just a kind of general overview of what support and resistance is and how it kind of acts in that first graphic there. We'll go ahead and go to the next one. Basically, the same thing. So this is the blue graphic. It has the red resistance, blue support. So, from left to right, you can see the stock's coming up. It, pulls back a little bit. We can say, okay, from its move to the upside, maybe this is the support. It goes up. It makes a new high. So in this case, it made a higher low and a higher high. So that's bullish, but it gets rejected and comes all the way back down to the same point it did previously. So now we can say, okay, this is support. And we want to now see, is this, is this top the resistance, which you can see, goes up a little bit, comes down, goes up a little bit, perfectly touches that resistance again. So now you have confirmation of your support and your resistance. And while it trades in that range, you can have those validated as this is support and this is resistance. You can see it comes back down, touches support again. And now we're going to flip that resistance into support because we break all the way through it. We come back down and retest it and continue higher. So that's your confirmation. You broke through that previous resistance level that you knew because, you're looking at price action and you know how to set support and resistance. So it breaks through that resistance. It comes back down and retests it and continues to the upside. So that's your confirmation. This resistance is now support. As you can see, the red line on the left turns into a blue line on the right and continues the same way we did before. So this is now support. Let's find our new resistance and so on and so forth. Third graphic, basically the same thing. We're trading in a range here. This is a perfect resistance and support channel. We're trading in it. You know, we're going up and down, we're going up and down, bang, we hit the support. So we're going to go up higher. All right, we hit resistance. Now we're trading, you know, in the range, kind of consolidating. You know, a little drop there, hits the support. All right, now we're going to bounce back up. We're kind of trading, hit support 2 or 3 more times. All right, now we go all the way back up to the resistance. We hit that. That's what trading in a range is. The range is basically the distance between the support and the resistance that we're trading in. So super basic kind of rundown of what support and resistance is, and just kind of how to set them, if you will. You're looking at a chart, you're looking at price action, you're looking at areas where, you know, buyers and sellers are fighting, and one of them wins. If the buyers win, well, that's probably a support. If the sellers keep winning at that area, well, that's resistance, and you can trade accordingly. So those are the kind of couple little graphics there. Again, you guys had those in the premium chat. If you guys have any questions, again, raise your hand or put them in the chat. I'll give you guys a moment, and then we'll kind of look at some real-time charts. All right, so if you guys have your Thinkorswim or whatever platform you trade on open, I have mine open up on my screen, and I'm gonna look at, let's just look at TQQQ. This is, you know, an ETF. This is basically, you know, the market. This is just a triple leveraged QQQ. So I'm gonna look on the 5 minute, and I'm gonna go back to yesterday. So yesterday on the 5 minute chart, you can see, so the market opened. We basically, you know, we dumped a little bit, printed a bigger candle. First, you know, a couple minutes, as we all know, is pretty volatile. So we first, you know, the first 30 minutes or so, we just kind of let things happen. And so now we're kind of looking for where is our support and where is our resistance. So again, TQQQ, if you're looking on the 5 minute chart, let's take a look at 1040. 1040, we have a red candle followed by a green candle, both with wicks to the downside. And so let's just draw, you can draw a physical line, or let's just say we draw an imaginary line right there. We'll just call it, you know, 3250. If you look previous on the chart, so meaning earlier in the day, so you're looking left of the chart, you can see there's several candles with wicks up through this point, but the body for the most part is to the, you know, below it. So super small sample size, but you can, even before we look at this candle at 1040, say, you know, this area could be at this point earlier in the day a level of resistance. As you can see, we printed a big candle, you know, to the upside, and if you're calling that resistance, we are going to say, okay, this resistance is now been broke through. Can we call this support? And what's the next step? If we do break through a resistance to call it a support, we want to see a retest. So if you can see, again, those wicks earlier in the day at 10:15, big candle to the upside, we break through what we would call that a resistance. And now we want to see a retest. So 1040 and 45, we can see these two candles, one red, one green, both wicks to about the same area. We'll call it 3250 to make simple, even round numbers. And that is our retest. So now we've said we had a resistance, we broke through it. We've now retested it twice on the 5 minute chart, and we've continued to the upside. So we can draw a line here saying that this resistance has now flipped to support, and we've moved to the upside. So if you want to keep this line drawn, I'll even draw a physical one here. Let me add a drawing, and I'll just do a price level. We'll basically just, you know, put it right here, and I'll extend it to the left. So I have a line right here that this used to be resistance. Here we flipped it to support, and we continued much higher. But just because we continued a lot higher doesn't mean that resistance flipped into support is not valid anymore. We're going to keep that line there, and we're going to say, okay, this is now our support. So 1045, strong move to the upside, which ends over 33 at 12.15, we'll say is the end of that move. Prints some red candles, and now we're saying to ourselves, okay, well, we kind of topped out there. We're moving to the downside. Where do we think the move to the downside is going to end? Well, the first thing we should think about is, what is our support and resistance? We, again, drew this resistance flip to support line right here. And that should be our first thought, as this is a pretty big move to the downside. Again, where's it going to end? Well, let's just take a peek at this line we drew. Big move to the downside. Bounced off VWAP a little bit. You can always use VWAP as a support and resistance, something you never have to draw. If it's above VWAP and is coming down to touch it, you can hope VWAP acts as a support. If it's below it, coming up to the VWAP, you can say that's probably going to act as resistance. So VWAP, middle VWAP, not top or bottom, those also can act as support or resistance. But middle VWAP, you can always say if price action is under it, VWAP is probably going to be a resistance. If it's above it coming down, hopefully it's going to be a support. But back to the line we drew way back here in the morning. So we're looking now at 13.25. So 125. We're talking several hours later after we drew this line. Well, look how valid it is. We come down here, big move to the downside. At 125, you can see this red candle perfectly hits this line. This green candle opens up. It's still hitting this line, and now we're continuing to the upside. So this line that we drew, which is a support, we drew this hours ago, perfectly validated hours later as support. Again, we get multiple candles here touching it. We come up, we break through VWAP, and you can obviously validate this as still support. So again, now let's go another hour in the future, more than that. Let's go to 2:45. Obviously that move is coming down. The wick doesn't just touch it, but it's basically at that level, and now you can say, okay, it hit basically this area. We're moving to the upside. This is still a support. And until that support breaks down, you can say that line is going to act as support all day. And you can see it did. So we came down here 1, 2, 3, 4, you can call it 5 retests throughout the entire day of this support. And this, if you made trades, if you longed off of this support, obviously taking profits on the way up, you'd obviously get out down here, come back down here, hit this support. Let's say you take another long. Well, you come up here, maybe you take profits, big move to the downside, but it doesn't even touch that. So you're not going to get stopped out. And then it continues higher, it makes a higher low and a higher high, which, as we talked about, is bullish. So that's a kind of small example on TQQQ from yesterday on the 5-minute chart. You can do this on any stock. You can do this on any time frame. This is basically just one example that I literally clicked on TQQQ just now and found. So you can look for these and kind of keep an eye out for where you can draw these levels. Box Trader, yeah. So we're just looking at whatever trading platform you trade on, and we're looking at TQQQ. That's the example we just went over yesterday. You like supply and demand zones more? Yeah. So again, this is a price level. As we talked about in these graphics, these are basically, you say demand zone. So we're talking about trading in a zone or a channel. That's kind of what we went over. You have a price, which is your support. You have a price, which is your resistance. And, you're kind of trading in that channel or that demand zone. So, what he's talking about is basically, what we're saying is a line. It's just basically a little bit bigger of a sample size. So if you draw a line, that's obviously one single price target. If you draw, supply and demand zones, we're really looking at a larger range of price. So if this line was a demand or a supply zone, and instead of saying, it wicked and barely touched this, you can basically give it a little more wiggle room. And you can say in this area of price on this stock, it's either supply or demand, which again is interchangeable with support and resistance. All right, so we went over kind of supply and demand, which again we can call support and resistance. We went over a basic, concepts of it in those graphics. We just looked at a real-time example on T-Triple-Q yesterday. So one more thing I want to cover quickly is what can you kind of do with supply and demand or support and resistance areas. In the example of T-Triple-Q, we said that you could basically say, all right, I'm going to, buy it right here and I'm going to ride it up. Test it again, maybe I'll buy it and ride it up. But we can also use support and resistance lines to create formations. We've talked about that briefly, wedges and ascending triangles and, descending support and things like that. Support and resistance can form these in stock. So let's take a look at snap. So just because we already looked at an example yesterday, we're going to look at Snapchat. SNAP is the ticker. We're going to look at the 5-minute chart yesterday. So Snap follows the market pretty closely. I'd say it follows SPY a little more than QQQ, but, to each your own. So let's take a look at, market open. So we'll look at the first half. So I'm going to zoom in, basically, market open. You can see big green candle, basically inverted hammer almost, but it is green. So price action happens, trading is going on, and you can try to make these formation lines, again, using support and resistance as early as possible, but especially on the 5-minute, you kind of need some price action to happen for it to really kind of tell you what's going on. So we don't really trade the first 2 minutes, so I'm not even going to count that first 5-minute candle. Let's take a look at basically from, 9:35 to about noon. If you draw a line, I'm going to start it on the 9:45 candle, the red candle. I'm going to start at the bottom of that wick, and I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to connect as many wicks as possible. So let's just draw it right there. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 wicks, and you can really count, 9 wicks or bodies if you want. So I drew a line from the bottom of that wick at 9:45 all up and to the right, ending, my line ends basically at the top of the 11:55 candle. So what is this line? We talked about basically a flat level or price where support and resistance is. But again, these can turn into formations. So in this case, on Snapchat, we have an uptrend on the 5-minute chart. You can see the price comes down and hits this. It then continues higher. The price, comes down, hits this twice, continues higher. The price comes down, bounces off this multiple times, continues higher. And it just keeps doing this. And this is an uptrend until it's not. So if you're trading Snap on the 5-minute chart, you can see that this is a clear uptrend. And if you want, you can say every time it touches this, I'm going to buy a little bit. And as it goes up, hopefully you're taking profits. It comes back down, touches it. And if it's an uptrend and it's making higher lows and higher highs, your initial trade will never get stopped out until, it obviously fails to do that. So let's say you take it down here on this line and you're riding it all the way up. It just keeps coming down and validating this line, which is support. Again, that is an uptrend and that is support until it's not. So as you can see here, we come down. We kind of break through it a little bit at 11:35, but then we get a big green candle to the upside. So you can say, okay, we still validated that. The green candle's body closed above that line, and the next candle started above it still. So we're saying, okay, this is still valid. This 5-minute candle touches it again perfectly, but the next 5-minute candle's body opens under it. That's a red flag. You're saying to yourself, okay, has this support been flipped? Is this uptrend over? As you can see, the candle we're talking about is at 11:50. That candle, the body opens under that line, and now this line has become resistance. If you extend this all the way to the right, you'll see 1, 2, you could even call it a third retest under that line. that's basically confirmation that that is no longer support. This uptrend is broken, and we're going to start a downtrend, which, as you can see, we did. Once this uptrend was broken, basically sold off the rest of the day. And you can do the same thing, the opposite way. So we broke this uptrend right here, as you see I have drawn. Again, 1, 2, you can call it 3 retests. We have now confirmation that uptrend is over, and now we're going to basically draw a downtrend. It's the same exact thing, just in the opposite direction. So let's say we start a downtrend at the top of the wick of the 1210 candle on the 5-minute chart. So we do that. We come down. So I'm touching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 6 wicks. So I have a downtrend drawn from the top of the candle at 1210 to basically the bottom of the candle at 135. So we're in a downtrend this entire time. You see we come up, we test it, we try to break out of it, but we have not only this downtrend, we also have VWAP right here. So we basically have 2 lines of resistance, and that was clearly validated. Huge sell-off there. Next candle, test it, goes down. Next candle, test it, goes down. The next candle, test it. It just, keeps validating that this is a downtrend until it's not. So a couple candles here, we break it, we come back down here. You can call this a retest. And then it basically consolidated the rest of the day, and then at the end of the day went up. But those are just a couple little examples of how support and resistance can create formations. In this case, we looked at an uptrend that, again, is an uptrend until it's not. Once that breaks, now we're looking at a downtrend, and we're going to look at that downtrend until it breaks. And you can continue to do that on basically any stock on any time frame, and you'll again validate those by the wicks, because the uptrend we have here that started at 9:45, and basically for 2 hours we tested it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times until it broke. And once it breaks, again, what did we talk about? Support is then flipped to resistance, or resistance flipped to support. So this uptrend is broken. We no longer have support. We've now flipped that onto resistance because we tested it again 2 or 3 times here, and now we have a downtrend. So those are just a couple examples of how price levels, support and resistance, can form formations. Those are basic uptrend and downtrend. Again, you can call these what you want. You can even have ascending triangles. You can have patterns that are created based on support and resistance. Super basic here. The uptrend broken, turned to downtrend. The downtrend broken is then a new uptrend. So what do we cover? Support and resistance, basically what they are, how to set them, how they are validated until, again, support becomes resistance, resistance becomes support, and how they can kind of turn into formations on a chart, and how you can use those to trade. Are there any questions on support and resistance? All right, if there's no questions, I will assume I did a okay job at explaining it. This is obviously, a little bit more basic stuff. That's what these group lessons are. So if you don't feel like you're learning a ton in these, that just means, hopefully anyway, that you know a lot of the stuff and you're kind of progressing as a trader. We will continue to progress in the lessons, but we obviously have people coming in here every single day that, this is their first day ever trading. So we got to make sure we still cover this stuff. Next week, we'll probably do another mindset. We have a couple more of those to complete that curriculum. Continue to bring your questions, whether it's on a lesson day or not. If you have questions, DM me. If you have topics you think would be helpful to anyone, or things you want to go over, let me know. We're going to try to start planning things a little bit more in advance so we know what we're doing that week, and so that you guys know as well. So I appreciate you guys showing up. As always, I value my time, and I know you guys do as well. So I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you're learning at least a little something. Keep showing up every day. Keep pushing. Does the Fed talk tomorrow? I believe, tomorrow, Friday, I believe there's actually a big Fed meeting. I think a couple people are actually speaking. So going to see a lot of volatility in the market tomorrow. Once that's going on, we'll talk about it a little more tomorrow, I'm sure, but just be careful. Volatility will probably be immense tomorrow, but Yeah, not a great combination. Fed talk Friday, kind of at support and or resistance, whichever one flips in the market. So a lot of things to look at tomorrow. On drug this morning when it bounced off VWAP, is that a good entry? So generally speaking, I kind of spoke about it a little bit. Middle VWAP, you can always count on that being a support or resistance, even if it's for a very short time. That will almost always be a support or a resistance. So if you're trading above it and you're coming down to test it, it's probably going to act as a decent support. Again, it could be for a very short time. It could literally be for 1 or 2 minutes, and then it can be flipped to resistance. But we usually play the breakout or the retest. But yeah, so generally speaking, again, middle VWAP, you can think of that as a support if you're trading above it, and if you're trading below it, coming up to test it, you can bet that's probably going to act as a resistance for at least some period of time. If you think that's a good entry, if other things are adding up other than just because you're testing VWAP, if there's other support lines, if that's a whole dollar or a psychological resistance line, that can be a piece of why potentially buying off VWAP would be a good entry. But I would hope that there's other things kind of going into that decision rather than just because it's testing VWAP. All right, guys. Again, this is recorded. It'll be posted on YouTube. So if you guys want to go watch it or kind of see any graphics or look at my chart specifically where I'm drawing stuff, feel free to do that. Yeah, no problem. Again, I appreciate you guys. Just keep showing up, keep pouring into yourselves, and try to keep positive mindsets as we trade, whether green or red, and hopefully the market flips here soon, and we'll just be making a bunch of money because you guys put in the time and learned and are ready for it. So I appreciate you guys, and you guys have a good day.